Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program. This is the submissions testing for my last Arjuna project. Now unfortunately we have a little bit of a problem. I underestimated you by quite a long way, in that there are now, sitting in this one column, 105 crafts. Actually no, it might just be 100. Oh, it's alright guys, it's alright, it's just 100. Just 100 to look through. Let's do a bit of maths, shall we? If I spent a minute on each one, that would be over an hour and a half. It's going to take a lot longer than a minute for each one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed run this. There are going to be several qualifier and then knockout rounds of testing. I've decided on a aim that I'm aiming for the series, and unfortunately this means that planes probably aren't going to be suitable. So if you're in the plane category, you're more likely to be knocked out, but not certain to be knocked out. Anyway, this has already gone on too long, so without further ado, the Aichi Tev. So this is the initial qualifying knockout round. As you can see, I'm doing the whole blender thing again. This has got an awful lot of wheels. Its mass is approximately 11 tons, which is absolutely fine. It has got an awful lot of capacity. It's got science on the back, which is interesting, but perhaps unnecessary. Interesting, it's generally really interesting design. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. The entire structure of it is very, very unique. Docking port at the front, which is very useful. And overall, I'd say that this passes the qualifying round. A great start from One Way Gaming. That is a yes. Next we have the Active Suspension Lightweight Rover V11, submitted by Dominic. Thank you very much for the submission. Did it again. And, okay, interesting. This thing wobbles around quite a lot. It seems like it's sagging from the weight in the middle. However, the whole panel design is very much something of my style. Nice lights at the front, look like it's got eyes. However, the turning is a bit worrying. And it's only got crew capacity of 1, which makes this kind of useless for anything apart from reconnaissance, I suppose. It's a bit wobbly, the turning is a bit hard, it travels very fast, but that's not uncommon. So overall, though it is very entertaining, and does seem to have RCS systems as well for some reason, I am going to give this one a miss. Thank you very much for the submission, but that is a no. I'm sorry, but I do have to be quite brutal with these entries. The next one is Alpha's LRGT, which is, again, an extremely unique design. It's a very, very little rover. Probe, not manned, no probe core, no command module, which allows it to be quite slimline and functioning. I can imagine this being really, really well flat packed, and there's even a attachment point up here that we could use for that, as it extends over the top of the lights even, with 4 seats for Kerbals placed conspicuously far together, but apparently this has been tested and does work. This is pretty good. 2 advanced SAS units. I'm not sure what the use of that is, but whatever the case, it gives it the form that you'd want. And even at high velocities, though the added up mass of the Kerbals may change this, it seems to be pretty nippy round corners. Yeah, going onto 2 wheels but not flipping over. This is not bad at all. That is a yes! For Dominic's... no, this wasn't submitted by Dominic, this was submitted by Marius. I'm so sorry. Marius's Alpha's LRGT. That is a yes. Next comes an entry into the plane category, which, though I said is going to be very difficult competition, this is brilliant. It is the Archaic Biplane, submitted by P.A. Doughty, or however you pronounce that name. Oh yeah, warning for this video, I will be pronouncing your name incorrectly. Just a bit of a heads up. It's a biplane with Rapier engines and lots of fuel, and it's underneath, and oh my god, it's amazing, yes, absolutely yes. 5th on our list is the Arrow Long Distance Single Stage to Orbit, submitted by Matthew. Thank you very much for the submission, as always. And here we have something that looks like a very capable single stage to orbit. Now, out of the planes category, the single stages to orbit have a higher chance of ascending, if you'll excuse the pun, to the, or past the qualifier round. But being an SSTO, it looks fantastic. I mean, for an SSTO. Most SSTOs make compromises on their aesthetic quality in order to be able to get up into orbit, like spamming intakes everywhere, but this is pretty nice. It feels responsive, it can do the acrobatics that I'd like to see it do, it doesn't flip out when I'm using RCS, or SAS even. Yeah, this is a yes, thank you very much for the submission. Returning once again to the Rovers category, we have the ATORV2, submitted by Jordan. Thank you very much for the submission. However, this thing is made up of 294 parts. It looks great. I really like the buggy design and the whole truck. It looks like a proper vehicle. There's plenty of crew capacity on the inside, and the interior is something that I particularly admire. However, at 294 parts, this thing is a beast. By itself, sure, it runs fine, but in conjunction with the high mass of other parts, and the fact that driving up a hill at high speed will cause it to flip out and completely destroy itself, despite the entertainment factor, I'm going to have to say this one is a no. Nice try though. With regards for testing out space tugs, which is one of the other categories that we had available for you to submit via, it's going to be pretty difficult because I don't have time to get them all into orbit. However, just by looking at each one, hopefully I'll be able to ascertain whether it is what I'm looking for. This thing's got directional engines in, well, all directions, detachable RCS mini-tugs on the side. The thrust from these engines should be sufficient, I'm guessing, to do and pull around fairly small things. We certainly won't be moving any big tanks. However, it does have the advantage of also being an adapter with a 3 meter or 2 meter to 1 meter adapter right there. Overall, this could work not as a tug, but as a hub, I suppose. A central connecting part between crafts, which could end up being very useful. So, though, if I get more crafts exactly like this in the future, I probably won't be accepting them. I'm going to give this one a chance because I can see where this might come in handy. This is the B&W Space Tug submitted by Dan, thank you very much. Named after the Norse god of fire, allow me to present this plane, which has just had its wing gun taken off. Oh. This was the C2 Sertra, have you pronounced that name, submitted by Adam. It still is, barely. Let's actually just take a look at it right now, shall we? So, we can close up the landing gear. The fuel lines leading from the main engine to the tank seems very good, so it's got 3 in total. The problem with having 3 engines like this means that if one pops and one flames out, you could end up spiraling in a horrible way. However, because it has 3, this is less of a problem than having 2, and as a result it may be more reliable. This thing is purely an atmospheric plane, not an SSTO. It won't be able to make orbit by itself. It is in fact a bomber, as we can see by... well, I don't know where it is, but we'll be able to drop those. There you go. Bombs. Bombs away. Bombs for everyone. It's an interesting design, however, bombing is not something we'll particularly be doing in this series. I would like to congratulate you on how well your plane continues flying, even with one of its wings taken off. That is a pretty cool feature, but otherwise I don't think this is the most suitable craft for what I am looking for. Regardless, thank you very much for the submission. We continue on the qualifying round with the Communication Rover Mark II, submitted by David. Thank you very much for the submission, and thank you very much for the very unique craft. This is... what? I can barely even tell what this is, it's just... it's... okay, yes, it's a communications rover, I understand that much. I've never seen anything like this. I'm so glad I decided to do this video, because I get to see a load of weird and wacky crafts. This is very interesting, however, it has a very high center of mass. Actually, no, it's handling the turns particularly well. The problem is I can't see much of a use for this. It doesn't look like it's going to be symmetrical, so launching it will not be the easiest thing. There's no fuel contained on it, which I guess is probably a good thing. At the very least, it could work as a light. Oh, they have funky lights. Okay, yes. Absolutely 100% yes. Funky lights for the win. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Submitted by World of Stuff, this is the DKSS Complete. The Juna Kerbal Space Station, I'm assuming that means. And yes, it is an entire fuel space station. Now, though you might say, well hang on, this is a bit unfair, he's got an entire craft. Surely you're only taking individual submissions. Something like this is pretty useful. If I can just if I can just take this up and push it to Juna with no problems whatsoever, then I will use this. And so far, looking at this craft, I think that is entirely possible. It even has parachutes for this craft. That is quite interesting, and I like how it looks. I do like the design. Plenty of solar panels, plenty of habitation modules, quite a lot of fuel. Not a massive amount. However, if these two things are equally weighted, which I think they are, based on the design decisions, then I will absolutely use this. Thank you very much for the submission. That is a yes. Here we have the DSK AS4, submitted by Zeda VS. Thank you very much for the submission. Now, I'm going to guess how this thing works. I'm going to let the engine throttle up, and 3, 2, 1, bam! Oh, it did hit, but there we go. This is an interesting SSTO. It has no wheels, no wings, and pretty much nothing to make it a plane apart from the fact that it's using an air-breathing engine. And, wow, okay, this is impressive because it's a very compact SSTO. However, the lack of wheels and the lack of wing surfaces mean that you can't land this thing on Kerbin and return it to orbit, which is kind of what I'm hoping to be able to do. Admittedly, it does fly startlingly well for something that has no wing surfaces, but unfortunately, due to that limitation of its one-time use nature, this will only ever be an escape pod, which can only ever be launched from the spaceplane hangar, or from the VAB, because it requires that launch lamp to start off. One-time use, not suitable for what I'm doing, but impressive nonetheless. This is the Juna Beetle V2. I think that might be Beetle, I'm not entirely sure. Submitted by IZ. Thank you very much for the submission, and thank you very much for this craft, because it looks rather interesting. The whole over-the-head roof design thing looks fairly sturdy, there's no wobble. Turning it, even at highest speeds, does not result in it turning over, even not on docking mode. However, it can only improve on docking mode, I suppose. The lights at the front are quite stylish, and you do, in fact, have coloured lights at the back, which really makes me want to accept you. However, actually, maybe I should. You know what? I can't deny the funky lights, but also the fact that this is built in the VAB makes it seem like this is going to be fairly symmetrically weighted, and in fact it does seem to be the case. I'm worried it may be weighted too much at the back, but overall, because it is so light, that shouldn't be a problem. And because it only has 33 parts, this isn't going to inhibit my other crafts by taking up too much of my processing power. So, in a pinch, but yes, I shall accept your craft. Allow me to present the Juna Fuel Station, submitted by Todd. Thank you very much for the submission, and thank you very much for including your own launch stage. If this thing works, which I imagine it will do, then this will considerably make things easier. In total, this is 294 parts, which was going to put me off. However, once the launch stage is all said and done, I'm guessing that this is the final stage. It contains a half 3-meter tank of fuel, which has surprisingly large capacity, so this certainly could be useful. A lot of RCS, which is similarly useful, 1 habitation storage, and a double-man pod, which is pretty nice. Overall, this seems very functional. I'm just wondering if it is unique enough to be worth a place. I'm going to say yes. It's symmetrical, so I'll be able to move it around pretty easily. It does contain quite a lot of fuel, so it's not worthless for a launch. Absolutely yes. Thank you very much for your submission, the Juna Fuel Station. Continuing on with those submitted with the start letter D, we have the Juna Mobile Base, submitted by Luke. Thank you very much once again. And this is very interesting. It contains a fair amount of parts, which is going to count against it. However, the design of it is pretty damn nice. Look, it even has a Communicon-tron thingy up here, which looks beautiful. I don't really use these parts, but looks are everything in this, and so far I'm saying it looks pretty good. It has a docking port at the back, which is going to be useful. However, transporting this thing to Duna may be a bit of a problem. It doesn't contain parachutes for itself, so getting it down will be annoying. I'll have to attach the parachutes myself, which isn't perhaps necessarily something that's a bigger problem for me. However, I don't think the submission of Funky Lights will make this convenient, which unfortunately is really what I'm looking for. It sounds quite lazy, but convenient is quite important. And also the vast number of wheels means that this thing is quite prone to flipping out. A nice try, something I might have otherwise accepted, but I'm gonna have to give this one a miss. Thank you very much. Submitted by Master Chief 1999. Next up is the Duna Project 2-in-1 Explorer Mark 7. You sure you didn't want to add any more numbers in there? No? Okay. Here we have a plane and a rover and fuel and... what? Has this been tested? How do I use this exactly? Okay, driving forwards doesn't do anything. If we can perhaps decouple the node here and drive... no, okay, we'll swap to this and drive and... as much as I'd like to otherwise, I'm going to have to put that down as a no. Here we have Equinox's Duna truck, submitted perhaps predictably by Equinox. Let's take a look at this. It doesn't look the greatest. It has 2 underside docking ports, which is interesting. Does this mean that I have to use a 2-part adapter in order to push this thing up from the base? I'm not entirely sure. It comes equipped with lights, but they are not funky lights. It has room for 4, and perhaps for storage, as there is a docking port here, which is an interesting addition. It can turn pretty well. It has RCS thrusters, but no RCS fuel of its own, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it'll provide merely an output source of thrust and force and torque and other such words. It looks pretty nice, I can see it being useful, however, I think I'm going to have a lot of other submissions and there's nothing that's startlingly unique that makes me want to use this. So simply due to the high volume of crafts that I have to get through, I'm going to have to say no. But nonetheless, congratulations on creating a... it looks like a face. I think I'll just leave it at that. Congratulations on making something that looks like a face. It is actually quite amusing. Next up, we have the Falcon Ssto, submitted by Kyle, who was the previous submitter of the Falcon 1 we tested in the first episode of this. And it's pretty nice, I like it. I'm not sure about the decision to move away from using Rapier engines and go instead with bog standard atmospheric engines, as this seems... it does limit its functionality on where it can be used somewhat. However, if this thing does work as an SSTO, I like it because... unlike the Falcon 1, it can actually pitch up at a reasonable rate. Plenty of RCS on the back, so I'm guessing that RCS is what's going to be used to get it up into orbit. However, it looks like there are... well, I couldn't really tell because I crashed it, because I'm an idiot. What did I see? I saw something that looked like it... could be an SSTO. It flew pretty well. If it is an SSTO and has wings and has wheels, I'll be able to use it. It did have 99 parts, which is edging on the large side. However, it was my fault for crashing it, so I think I'm going to put this thing through in order to have a look at it later on and re-evaluate. That is a yes for the Falcon SSTO. Here we have the Flybe Enterprise Duna Rover, submitted by Stickpool. Stickpool actually gave me very many, like at least 5 aliases that I could have used. However, I chose Stickpool because it reminds me of Deadpool, and I thought that'd be quite cool. Badum-tish. This is a interesting 2-man rover. It looks a bit like a Batmobile because the wheels, it's got 2 wheels inside each, well, wheel, which pop out awfully disconcertingly. It carries fuel, albeit a very small quantity of fuel, carries RCS on one side and generators on the other side, which is interesting asymmetry, Makes me wonder if it is actually symmetrical in terms of mass. I like how it looks a lot. The problem is, and actually it's driving pretty damn well as well. Oh, well, we also have decouplers, so we're going to take a look what the decouplers do. Explosions. And it separates into a bike. Oh man, if only I actually did that properly. That is really quite cool. That is actually... yeah, it's so cool, but I'm not going to have much of a use for it. So though I would like to see this thing do something really awesome, I'm convinced it will be able to, I don't think it's going to happen in my series. So putting this through would be a bit of a waste. Sorry, but congratulations on making something that looks pretty damn awesome. Submitted once again by Stickpool, this is the Flybe Enterprise Fuel Tug, sporting 4 times liquid fuel engines, plenty of RCS, a lot of fuel, and plenty of, well, pretty much everything else. Torque, advanced SAS, lights, does it have lights? It has purple lighting, I do like purple. Purple is a nice colour. It is a pretty interesting entry. I'm worried that these engines aren't going to be efficient enough, however they will provide a lot of thrust, which might be necessary at times. It does also go from a 2 meter to a 1 meter, which can use it as an adapter, whilst having outer mounted engines so that it could lift... Yeah, it could pull or push things from either direction, even whilst at the centre of 2 things at the same time. Yes, this is a yes. Thank you very much for the submission. Here we have the Flying Rover, submitted by Zachary. This is another unique one, which makes me interested to see how it will work. It has very, very close-in mounted rover wheels, which will make it very prone to tipping over. However, it also has very, very far out-mounted VTOL engines, which I suppose I activate using this key. Unfortunately, they can't lift its weight. On Kerbin, they may well be able to do it on Duna. However, I can't be sure unless I was to take this thing out there myself. Other aspects, it has parachutes. If we actually put on hat gravity, take this thing up. Okay, the fuel flow isn't central, or at least not after a little while it isn't. Unhack gravity and use the parachutes for... And the parachutes aren't particularly central either. Overall, the build quality on this doesn't seem all that impressive. It seems like it's going to be prone to crashing, braking. Yeah, thank you, but no thank you. Next, we have the Fuel Tanker, submitted by Rage Germany, or Rage GER. I'm not sure if it's supposed to mean Germany or not. I'm going to call you Rage Germany. This is a fuel tug tanker of sorts. It contains a lot of fuel in this big tank here, and interestingly enough, it's sporting cosmetics, which is a very interesting decision. These air tanks are purely intended to make it look good. Now, normally, I wouldn't really like this kind of thing. I think up until now, I've preferred bland functionality over a waste of processing power to make things look good. However, it does look good. The whole part clipping thing, it makes it look very unique, and it also does use aerospikes, allowing for extra thrust in the opposite direction, which may not be the most useful thing. However, once again, it does have that adapter functionality that we've seen on other crafts. It has plenty of torque, it has a lot of fuel, atomic engines are going to be pretty damn efficient, the cosmetics won't take up too much mass, so they won't hinder the functionality too much. Yeah, all these words coming out of my mouth are pretty damn positive, so I'm going to give that a submission. Next we have the Fuel Tug, also submitted by Rage Germany. And this one is a bit more clean, I suppose, is one way of putting it. It's the same idea design. It's got atomic engines pointing one way, aerospikes pointing the other way. It's got a lot of RCS, a bit of fuel, not an awful lot of fuel. Does have quite a lot of thrust. If I've put the other one through, I see little point in putting this one through as well, because it's the same thing but with fewer parts, which may be an advantage. However, I've already submitted the other one, so this one is almost redundant. Thank you very much for the submission. I appreciate the toned down version, but this one won't be going through alongside your other one. This is the Fueler 9005, sporting over 190 parts, and a seemingly similar high number of parachutes. That is a lot of parachutes. This is a Fueler, so I'm guessing it's intended for attaching basically to anything using these docking claws here, and giving fuel to anyone and everything. So, in order to rate its functionality at doing that, I would probably have to test it. However, it has an awful lot of parts which makes it pretty much out the bat unsuitable, in that I'm running at 10 frames per second. So pretty much no matter how good this thing is, the impact it will have on my ability to use other crafts as well is going to make it unsuitable. However, the use of the docking the docking claws, the arms, is something that I am intending to do regardless, because there's no way we're going to be able to interface docking ports between everyone's different individual submissions. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether people have docking ports or not, because I'll probably end up using a claw regardless. Well-placed and logically placed docking ports will merely make things easier for me. Give me more options. Either way, this thing is not quite so suitable, but thank you regardless, Stephen, for the submission. Submitted by Dane. This is the G_D_I_D_B. It is... I'm not entirely sure what that stands for. There was no description on the parts, but hey, this is a Rover. It's got a load of wheels. It carries just liquid fuel, which is interesting. However, it's interesting in the more of limiting why would you do that kind of way. So, overall, this thing doesn't seem like it's going to be particularly useful. I can tell pretty much just by looking at it. It's got room for one. It's actually no, it does have command seats for other Kerbals. However, I've already got other Rovers that will probably do this and better. And the limitation of just carrying liquid fuel, whilst interesting, is not going to be very useful when we don't have any atmosphere to provide oxygen. So, thank you very much for the submission, but that is a no. Moving on to the H category, we have Harvey's Jet. I'd like to point out that a lot of the ones in the H category either begin with Hoc or Harvey, so we'll be seeing quite a few similarly named crafts. This cannot do aileron rolls. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. It does look really nice, however, it was an atmospheric plane that didn't have any SSTO capability, and so it isn't going to be particularly useful when we're going to Juna. Looks very good, thank you very much for the submission, Trogdor, but I'm going to have to give it a pass. Next we have Harv's Best Option Mark 1, submitted by Lance. Again, this is a purely atmospheric plane. I like the barren wing service. The fact that there's not using an awful lot of them is a very nice style that I agree with. It's very responsive, has quite a large fuel capacity, would be fairly good as a scout. However, it only has room for one Kerbal. The lighting is perhaps quite nice. It is a bit jumpy, but that's probably just because I'm not using fine controls. There we go. I quite like it. I actually do quite like it. It seems very fast. One engine and a lot of fuel means it would probably have quite a large distance. It can do aileron rolls perfectly. Look at that. Look at that beautiful spin around that central axis. This is a hard decision. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to put this one through and break the losing streak. Thank you very much, Lance, for the submission. Next, we have the HETEV, the Heavy Exploration Rover, submitted by Sporegan. Submitted by Spore. This is the... It's like an entire base, it's like a truck all in one. I like the design. 6 wheels with additional landing gear, which is a design I've employed into our Kerbal Polar Expedition thing to prevent it from braking upon hitting bumps at the front. It looks very prone to tipping over, but perhaps if I put it into docking mode, it'll be less so. Yeah, it's alright, it's okay. This thing has quite a lot of parts, but it's not causing too much lag. The part count is always an issue that I'm conscious of. However, it does provide this mode, which you got to admit this mode is it's just beautiful. I do like it. There's something... It is very prone to tipping over. But I do like it. I even like that about it, somehow. Oh, I've got to go with my gut feeling. I'm going to let this one go through. Thank you very much for the submission. Spore. In the last submission for today, we have the Hinkle Winkle Eats the Armpit Jahr, which is interestingly named. Submitted by Geersvaart. Geersvaart? Whatever the case, this is pretty damn interesting. I'm not sure what to make of this. It looks like you've just spammed wing surfaces literally everywhere. However, you have a load of solid rocket boosters, which suggest that something interesting is going to happen. Well, seeing as this is the last one, we might as well play about with this for a bit longer. It looks like it's got plenty of opportunity for being played with. So, what are you? Is that a separate plane? Oh, I think it's got a separate plane. Okay. Well, we're going to fly this thing level, like this. The lack of wide wing surface is interesting, but it doesn't make it look any good. I think with a really big wing surface, it would actually probably look better. It also seems like it's got a lot of fuel. And, yeah, okay, right, we're going to stage. Oh, okay, so that sends off the outer wings, revealing this, which when we do that... we'll separate away! Like an emergency abort, I suppose. That's pretty cool. And now we're using a liquid engine. That is quite interesting. I'm actually quite liking this. Let's see. Free chase cam. Right, and we can fly around a bit as I make my final judgments on today. So that is the finished recordings for this first redial episode of my submissions testing. We got through 35 submissions out of 100. Which is not bad going, I think. Not sure how long this video will be, but whatever the case, I really hope you've enjoyed it. This final craft is another one of those that's really interesting and is just fun to play with. But I'm not sure I will be finding much of a use for it, unfortunately. As much as I'd like to say otherwise, I don't think that this is going to make it onto the show. However, there are still about 70 left which may have a chance of doing so, and we'll only find out in the next episode of my submissions testing. Thank you very much to everyone who has submitted a part so far, and has submitted a part at all. You were all necessary for this to happen. I hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly enjoyed playing around with these. It makes for a bit of a change of scenery, if nothing else. Playing around with other people's parts is one of the most entertaining things, and in the future I hope to be doing it more as future updates to KSP happen. The actual series itself probably won't be starting for a little while, that was close, but as soon as I've finished with the submissions and made some more preparations, I'll be getting onto that as soon as possible. Submissions are now closed, by the way. You won't be able to submit any more for this series, but we still have plenty to look forward to. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, please do like the video, and I shall see you all next time. It's interesting. It's generally really interesting design. Okay, interesting. However, it's an interesting design. However, interesting. However, this is an interesting one. However, interesting. However, interesting. However, interesting is an interesting addition. However, it was interesting two-man rover. However, an interesting enough, very interesting decision. However, it does look good. However, which is interesting. However, it's interesting in the interestingly named. Interesting. However, interest. That is quite interesting. I'm actually quite liking this. By the way, the Kerbal Polar Expedition is happening on August 6th to August 10th. We are raising money for charity water by driving a buggy, rather like this one, though very much different, all the way from here at the Kerbal Space Center to the North Pole, over the course of probably what is going to be a 20-hour mission. Very exciting stuff. I'll link you right now to a video announcing the Kerbal Polar Expedition the Kerbal Polar Expedition 2, please do go click that. It's all for charity in order to provide sources of clean water to those who are in dire need of it. It's going to be interesting.